Und herzlich willkommen zurück hier auf der Rocket Bean Stage hier in Halle 7. Der hohe Besuch, der nimmt nicht ab. Wir hatten gestern Marcin Iwinski von CD Projekt Red und heute geht es weiter mit Suda51 und dafür werden wir natürlich auch wieder auf Englisch sprechen. Hello and welcome Suda51. How are you doing?
Hi, that's good.
元気ですか？
はい、元気だよ。
Yeah, I'm doing really well.
ドイツ来たらやっぱビールなんで、今ビールもらっちゃいました。
So I know, like, I'm here in Germany, so I figure the very first thing I need is beer. So that's why I'm all about here on the stage with some beer.
That's perfect.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, Suda, you're here in Germany and you flight here from Japan. How do you like Germany so far? How would you compare Germany to Japan for the start?
はるばる日本からドイツへ来たんですけれども、
Yeah.
今まではどうですか？ドイツと日本の違いは何でしょうか？
涼しい、とても涼しい。日本はめちゃくちゃ暑い。今だからドイツ来れてすごく僕らはラッキーですね。
So I think the number one thing is that right now Japan is really hot,
Yeah.
whereas Germany here is nice and cool. It's like a good temperature, so it really feels good.
あとは久々僕5年ぶりにゲームズコム来たんですけども、ものすごい人が増えてる。
And it's been 5 years since I was last at gamescom, and wow, I'm really surprised by how many people are here.
Nice.
いやすごいね。
Perfect. Suda, your last game was Travis Strikes Again, a spin-off
Yep.
to the No More Heroes series. For the people out there who don't really know the game, what is it all about?
一番最新のゲームはやっぱり Travis Strikes Again ノーマーヒーローズの外伝みたいなことですね。
そうですね。
それはまだ知られてない人たちに
はい
簡単に説明していただければ。
もともとノーマーヒーローズというのは殺し屋同士の戦いで、主人公のトラビスがまるでジェダイのような貢献を持って、そして敵をなぎ倒す、そしてプロレス技を使います。そして特徴的なのはトイレでセーブをするというゲームなんですけども、これが昔任天堂 Wii の時に1と2発売されまして、久々今年ですね、スイッチでトラビス・ストライクス・アゲインで復活しました、トラビスが。
So if I were to explain what No More Heroes is in general terms, I would say it's a game where you're a bunch of assassins kind of fighting. You're an assassin fighting a bunch of other assassins with these kind of Jedi-like lightsaber-y things, and you use kind of pro wrestling techniques to take down your enemies. You save the game by going to the bathroom and a toilet. And then the other thing I'll add is it's been a long time since 1 and 2, No More Heroes 1 and 2 released, and now we finally managed to kind of cover that distance and enter with Travis Strikes Again.
Perfect. For that game, you collaborated with different kind of indie developers and indie games. How did that came to be?
TSA にいろんなインディーゲーム開発者とコラボしていたんですよね。
そうですね。
それどういういきさつ、どうやってそういうことに決めたんですか？
この TSA に関して言うと、実は殺し屋同士の戦いじゃないんですよ。今回はビデオゲームの世界にトラビスが入ってしまって、ビデオゲームのキャラクターと戦うんですね。そういうこともあって、本当にインディーゲームいっぱい僕が刺激を受けたインディーゲームだったりとか、若いゲーマーがクリエイターが作ってるインディーゲームとコラボをして、トラビスが実際 T シャツを着れるようになってます、ゲーム内で。
So in Travis Strikes Again, it's not a game where you're fighting other assassins. It's actually a game where you're kind of jumping into video games and fighting characters in video games and kind of going through these video games. So part of the reason why I kind of made this was that I was really inspired by a lot of the young indie creators who were making really cool new games. So I took that kind of aspect in and I brought it into the game. And then I figured, if we're going to do some indie collaborations, we might as well have Travis wearing t-shirts to have that up there.
I see. Okay, those indie games had one thing in common. They were all from the West, or they were mainly from the West. Why do you think is the indie scene in Japan compared to the West or Europe, North America so small?
TSA にインスピレーションとされたインディーゲームはやっぱりみんな西洋のゲーム、欧米のゲームだったんですけれども、日本のインディーゲームはやっぱり見えになってはいないです。今西洋にあるインディーゲーム業界と日本のインディーゲーム業界になぜそんなに差があるんですか？大きさ。
TSA の開発がスタートしたのが2年前ぐらいなんですけども、その頃と比べて今の日本のインディーはだいぶ活性化してます。すごく盛り上がってますし、若いクリエイターが自分たちのプライベートの中でゲームを作ったりとか、本当に会社員ではなくてみんな独立した形でインディーゲームを作っているので、ここから1年から2年先っていうのは日本のインディーゲームもすごく熱いものが出てくると思います。期待してください。
So when I first started creating Travis Strikes Again, Japan's indie game scene was a lot smaller than it is now. But in the past 1 or 2 years, the indie game scene has really kind of exploded forward. Now there's lots of young, energetic, interesting creators creating really cool things. So I think maybe this isn't answering in the past, but in the future, I think the next year or two, probably the indie game scene in Japan is going to become an even more amazing thing. And so I want everybody to keep an eye on Japan for that.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. What do you think is that? Why do you think that the indie scene in Japan is starting to grow right now?
じゃあそれなぜ今になって日本のインディーズゲーム業界は活性化とされたと思います。
もちろん海外のインディーシーンが、日本に与えた影響もでかいですし、もう何回目になるのかな、京都で今ビットサミットという、インディーゲームの祭典があります。これが毎年盛り上がってるんですね。そこで、日本のゲーマーもそうですし、日本のクリエイターもそうなんですけども、インディーに対してすごく興味が湧いてきて、そこが多分熱くなって影響を受けて日本のインディーシーンも活性化している一つの要因だと思います。
So I think one of the major reasons would be that, I mean, in recent years, indies in general have become really popular and they've become really influential in the game industry. And obviously there were a lot of Western indie games that were very popular, so I think a lot of Japanese creators maybe were inspired by that. But then there's also some homegrown events in Japan called, like, there's one Bit Summit, which is every year. And every year it's becoming much, much bigger. And that has a lot of Japanese-only indie games. So I think people are just seeing those sorts of things and their passion's gradually growing and they're gradually wanting to make more and more stuff.
Interesting. Have you played any indie games in the recent time that stood out to you?
最近プレイしたインディーゲームの中になんか特別にこれが面白かったものはありました？
まだねちょっとクリアできてないのが一つあって、やっぱエイプアウト、僕大好きなんですけども、なかなか難しくて今6面かな、なかなかクリアできないんですよね。
There's one that's really kind of stuck out to me that I still haven't been able to beat. It's called Ape Out. And I'm stuck on the 6th level and I just can't get past that.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, interesting. Suda, most of your games and characters are pretty weird, and that's why people around the globe love them. How do you approach a new game? What are the first things you're considering while developing a new game?
やっぱり須田さんのゲームの、キャラやゲーム実態はやっぱりちょっとおかしな点も多いと思いまして、それで愛されてると思うんですよ。で、そのゲーム企画、ゲームを開発にあたって、どうしてこういうなんかちょっと面白いおかしく要素を入れようとするんですか？またはどのように入れるんですか？
そうですね。僕はゼルダの伝説が大好きなんですけども、僕がゼルダと同じゲームを作っても仕方ないんですよね。だけどゼルダの中で体験するような冒険をもっと面白い、もっとなんか特別というか、すごくエクストリームな何か体験を入れたいと思っていて、本当裏ゼルダのような、そんなゲームを毎回作っていきたいなっていうのもあって、面白おかしいことをたくさん入れてます。
So, one of the games that really means a lot to me is The Legend of Zelda. That was a really game I enjoyed playing.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, like, if I just tried to make a copy of Legend of Zelda, if I made my own version of it, it wouldn't be that interesting. It wouldn't be stand out. So, in the end, I kind of take the things I like from all these. I take the inspiration. I'm like, well, I want to make my own version that's maybe like, like an underground version of Legend of Zelda, where we're kind of adding all sorts of these interesting, weird things that I like.
I see. Okay. Do you have any other inspirations outside from games, like music and movies that you're taking to develop and create new worlds and characters?
ゲームの他にインスピレーションとされる音楽とか映画とかそういうこともあります？
ありますね。とても大きくあります。はい。
それはどんなことですか？
例
えば今回ノーマーヒーローズ3を僕ら開発してるんですけども、これは完全にロッキー3からの影響なんです。やっぱりロッキーも3になって一つ大きな舞台に上がったと思うんです。今回のトラビスも3になってまた一つ大きな舞台立ってます。はい。ミスター T のようなサノス級のヤバいやつと戦う、そんな戦いにトラビスは繰り出します。
So yeah, there's a lot of things that have inspired me outside of games that make me, want to put these kind of things into my games. And one of them for No More Heroes 3 specifically is Rocky 3, the movie. And for Rocky 3, Rocky has kind of gotten a little bit older. He's fighting more and more powerful people as he goes. And then he kind of faces down Mr. T in the movie. So in this one, I kind of want to have that similar thing. Like, Travis is getting a little bit older. Now he's facing down stronger and stronger opponents. And now he's got all these Thanos level opponents who are like popping up that he has to take down.
Nice. Okay, that said, what do you think makes a Suda51 game stand out compared to other games, Suda51?
で、Suda51 のゲームが他のゲームと比べて何が独特な一点だと思います？
作ってる僕ら自身は本当に普通のゲームを作ってる感覚なんですけども、 ちょっともうやっぱり他のゲームの血の量が多いなっていう血の量が、ちょっと多すぎるかなっていう気はしてますかね。そのぐらいかな、違いはね。
So I think for us, we just think we're making normal games. This is like just normal for us. So I mean, I can't really think of that much. But if I had to pick one thing that's maybe different between our games and other games, we have lots more blood, maybe.
Okay. I see. Interesting. Suda, I would like to talk a bit more about your past. I've noticed in my research that you started working for a funeral parlor before breaking into games. How did that came to be?
スーさんの過去についてちょっといろいろ聞きたいと思います。
いやいや。
で、ゲーム業界に入る前に葬儀者やっていたんですよね。
やってましたよ。
それどういういきさつでそれになったんですか？
やっぱり僕はそのゲーム業界に入れると思ってなかったので、ゲームっていうのは僕は博士が作ってると思ったんですよ、ラボで。なので、やっぱり生活のために、当時も結婚してましたから生活のためにやっぱ食っていける職業ということで、葬儀屋をやって、すごく稼げたんですよね。だからもう社員になっていこうと、この世界でやっていこうと思った時に、妻から本当にその仕事でいいのっていうことでこの業界に入ることになりました。
So I initially never really thought I would enter the game industry. Like initially I thought the game industry, people who made games were like professors in laboratories, like beakers or something. And at the time, when I became a mortician or worked in a funeral parlor, I was married. So I was looking, what is a job that I can do where I can sort of, like make enough money to live and eat and support my family? And I eventually discovered that, the whole funeral parlor thing was actually a fairly lucrative position that you could do. So I ended up making a decent amount of money and having, kind of that experience. But when I eventually decided to switch to the game industry, I ended up having to sit down, talk to my wife, like, will we be able to eat? Is this going to be something that we can support ourselves with? And I kind of eventually decided to do it.
All right, but why did you think that video games could be a good career though?
それで、なぜそのゲームの開発を、いいキャリアになると思っていたんですか？
話せば長くなるんで、時間って1時間ぐらいあるのかな。
We have about an hour. This might be really long, so I mean, how much time do we have?
This is totally fine. We have all the time we need.
これ欲しいだけの時間をいただいてもいいですよ。
OK?
It's totally fine.
短く言うと、少し前に僕はセガの会社案内を作ってたんですよね。グラフィックデザインの仕事、葬儀屋になる前に。その時にセガの開発現場を見て、博士じゃなくて僕らと同じような人間が作っていることを知ったんです。でそれでちょっと憧れたんですよね。もし入れるんだったら、もちろんビデオゲーム大好きでしたから、入れるんだったらこの世界で仕事したいっていう思いがちょっとあって、それで運よく入ることができました。
So this might be the short version, but when I was still working in a funeral parlor, I kind of had a chance to go to Sega's office and see like them actually making a game, and I realized at that point, like, oh, this isn't like a professor in a laboratory. This is like a person like me can go out there and be part of this industry and kind of create cool things. And I think, wow, that'd be really cool if I could do this sort of stuff as well. So that was kind of the main inspiration for me to switch careers at that point.
I see. Okay, Suda, if you had the opportunity to develop your absolute dream project, if there were a publisher that would fund you with all the budget you need, what kind of a game would you develop? What is in your head?
もし無条件にパブリッシャーが須田さん自分が夢となる好きなゲームを、自由に作ってくださいって言われたらどんなゲームを作るんですか？
わー、本当に
？Can I really? Does that exist? Can that happen?
It can be. It sure can be. It sure can happen.
可能ですよ。
本当に500億ぐらい使えるのかな。
I could probably use about like 500 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Let us say 500 million is the cap.
Okay. じゃあ5億ユーロがキャップとなる。
OK。横スクロールの 2D アクションゲームをやっぱ作りたいですね。
So I think if I had that much money, I would definitely want to make a 2D side platforming game.
Really?
いやもう絶対に終わらないんですよ。ずーっとものすごい長いマップ。
It's the one that was so long it would never end.
ずーっと。
But why though?
なぜ？
Why do you like that kind of game?
どうして
Why
そう
would
い
you
う
do that?
どうしてそういうゲームがもうそこまで作ろうと思うんですか？
誰も見たことないゲームなんでね。2D 横スクロールゲームで500億使うことなんてありえないので、それ一回やってみたい。
I'd probably want to make it just because nobody ever would think to spend 500 billion euros to make a side-scrolling 2D action platformer.
多分1万時間使ってもクリアできないんで。
So make it so that like you could spend maybe like 10, 20, 30,000 hours and still never be able to clear the game. That would be a really interesting thing.
Okay.
まあ、そういうゲームをね
That'd be nice.
サイドスクロールオープンワールドだからね
Signing a side-scrolling open world game.
Yeah.
And side-scrolling open world game.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen something like that?
そういうこと見たことあります？
いやだから地平線で全てがつながってるんだよね、ホライズンですよ
So like the entire horizon's
オ
all
ープン
way.
ホライズンよくわかんないな
I'm not really sure what I'm talking about, but just the horizon goes on forever.
何言ってんだよ
Okay.
What am I talking about?
Zuda, how would you... what can you tell us about your upcoming projects? Besides No More Heroes, there will be even a new Fire Pro Wrestling.
ああいや
No More Heroes 3の他に、まあ、新しいタイトルについて語っていただけますか？まあ、Fire Pro Wrestling の新作もあるんですよね。
そうですね僕が何年ぶりかな23年ぶりにファイプロに関わることになって、まあ、最後に作ったファイプロがファイアプロレスリングスペシャルという、まあ、ストーリーモードがあるんですね。チャンピオンロードという、若手のレスラーがチャンピオンシップに上り詰めて最後は自殺しちゃうんですけども、その息子が実は生きていて成長して今プロレスラーになった物語チャンピオンロード2を今執筆しますこれから。
So yeah, the last time I was able to work on Fire Pro Wrestling was 23 years ago.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was working on Fire Pro Wrestling Special, and I got to kind of work on a story mode, something called the Champion mode, where you as this kind of champion, you as a pro wrestler become a champion, and then eventually you reach the kind of end of your career, and you commit suicide, and you kind of die. But right now, I have the really nice opportunity to write a sequel to that, kind of, in a way. Basically, the son of this wrestler who killed himself in Fire Pro Wrestling Special is still alive, and he's decided to enter the pro wrestling world, and now it's his kind of story.
What was the reception of the people saw that ending in Fire Pro Wrestling? I think that was pretty intense.
その自殺行為のエンディングの反応はどうでしたか？それ結構過激なものでしたよね。
もちろん当時はまだ SNS もインターネットもない時代なのでみんなハガキを送ってくるんですよ。みんな覚えてるかな、みんな若いから分かんないかもしれないけどハガキを送ってくるんですよね。でそこのハガキに死ね金返せ殺すとかもうすごいんですよ。この段ボール3箱分ぐらいもう全部罵倒ですね。
So,
多かった。
So at that time, it was before the age of SNS for social networking services. So there's no like Twitter, there's none of that. So people would always send fan feedback by letters, and I'm not sure if anybody here is kind of like old enough to really remember that. It might be a different generation, but back at that time, like we kept getting all these like 3 giant boxes worth of like letters, and all of them would say things like "Die," like "Give me my money back." I can't believe you.
Yeah.
Jeez, okay. But how is it like to work on Fire Pro Wrestling again? I think it is an IP which started your career, is it right?
ファイアプロレスリングにまた携わることにはどんな思いを描いたんですか？一番最初の作だったんですよね。
自分のルーツにまた戻るって機会なかなかなくて、まずはそのファイプロという IP を守ってくれたスパイクチューンソフトにすごく感謝してますね。彼らがやっぱファイプロを大事にしてくれたんですよね。
So the opportunity to return to the roots of somebody as like the game developer is a really rare opportunity. So I'm really happy that I got the chance to do, to return to this kind of IP that helped that I established in the beginning of my career. And I have to say, I really want to thank Spike Chunsoft for like protecting the IP and really treasuring it for so long.
Cool. So, and besides of that, of course, there is No More Heroes 3. How was the reception after you announced, or you stealth announced the game with the ending of Travis Strikes Again? A small spoiler here.
そして新作、No More Heroes 3これから作ることなんですが、今の反応はどうですか？ E3 でトレールをリリースしたと思うんですけど、その反応とTSA ではちょっとなんかステルシー的にはちょっとなんかエンディングでヒントをしていたんですよね。その時の反応についてもちょっと教えていただきたいと思っています。
まずはその TSA のエンディングはファンの期待をすごく煽ってしまってみんな3を期待してくれたんですよね。でもそれがねやっぱり E3 で、今映像流れてますけどこのトレーラーで発表できて恐ろしいぐらい反応がいいです。ネガティブな反応が本当にないんじゃないかなっていうぐらいみんなファンの期待に応えられてるんじゃないかなと思います。
So on the ending of TSA, I think I really kind of like got all the fans worked up, and I think a lot of people were really just excited about it. They're like, oh, whoa, what's going to happen? And then when I finally released this trailer for No More Heroes 3, I think the overall reaction was extremely positive. We had lots of people who were like, yes, finally, sort of thing.
Cool. So for how long are you working now on No More Heroes 3? Or is the development way at the start right now?
今、ノーモアヒーローズ3の開発は今どの段階にあるんですか？今もうちょうどスタート時点なのですか？
いや、もうだいぶ進んでますね。50% に近いぐらいの状況になってますね。はい。
No, we've
いくつか
actually...
のごめんね、いくつかのボスファイトは、完成していて、まあ本当にポリッシュもしている最中だったりします。
So we're actually fairly far into the development cycle. We're about, I'd say, maybe 50% done. So we've created a lot of the assets. We're moving forward with the entire production.
I see. Okay, and what can we expect from No More Heroes 3? Is it more like it is more of the same, or can we expect some new elements, even some new characters or something like that?
3について何を期待できますか？同じ要素、同じタイプのゲームなのか、また新しいキャラが出るか、新しい要素が入るなのか。
まあたくさんね喋りたいんですけども、まあでもそれこそファンのみんなが期待していることをこのゲームでやっぱ実現していきたいので、まあ、本当にフィードバックっていうもの、今の時代ってやっぱ SNS でフィードバックもらえる時代なので、そこをちゃんと見ながらなんですけども、その想像を超えるようなゲームを僕らは作っていきたいので、みんなが期待するようなキャラクターだったりとか、あとはもちろん TSA トラビス・ライクスターゲーに登場したキャラクターも何人か登場します。ぜひその辺は期待してほしいですね。
So there's a lot I do want to say about this, but there's only so much I can't say at this time. But one thing I did want to make obvious is that we are listening to fan feedback a lot. We do want to have use SNS and other sort of services like that to listen to the voice of the people who want this game. But we want to take their feedback and listen to what they're doing. But at the same time, we also want to create something that exceeds all of their expectations. We want to make something that nobody can imagine. And of course, we're going to have characters that you're familiar with from the series. We're going to take characters and things that happen in TSA and bring them into the new game as well. So, look forward to it.
Cool. Are there any other projects or IPs you would like to visit again?
他にまた携わりたいプロジェクトとかIP とかの作品はあるんですか？
ね、やっぱファンの声がすごく多いのは、例えばロリポップチェーンソーとかすごく人気があって、みんなまた続編を見たいっていう声があるんですけども、分かんない、それは本当に縁というかタイミングだったりとか、あとはパブリッシャー、IP 持ってる人たち、ワーナーとか、そういった問題もあると思うんですけども、また何かねそういうのができると面白いかもしれない。
So, we are definitely listening to our fans' voices for this, and one of the things that a lot of people say is they want to see Lollipop Chainsaw come back. So, I would really love to work on that again at some point, but there's a lot of problems like when do we release it? What there's a timing we're gonna do? What the publishers think? There are people who have the IP like Warner and everybody else, so there's a lot of things that we have to establish before we'd be able to, work on the things like that.
That's interesting. Why do you think that people love Lollipop Chainsaw so much?
なぜみんなはそんなにロリポップチェーンサー好きなのですか？
やっぱりあんなにバカなゲームはなかなか存在、ノーマンヒルズももちろんねすごくいい意味でバカなゲームだと思うんですけど、やっぱりそのゾンビの首を飛ばしてそれがバスケットボールのゴールに入って点数が入って逆転する、そんなゲームは誰も見たことないので、またみんな世界に入りたいんじゃないかなと思います。
So I think probably just because it's an absolutely stupid experience that you can't really get that many other places. And I mean, No More Heroes 2, I think in a good meaning it's kind of a stupid game. But I mean, Lollipop Chainsaw, like you're cutting off zombies' heads and then like you shoot hoops within. If you get like a score, you get a point and like it helps you get back into the game. So I think like that's not an experience you can really have that many other places. So maybe that's why.
Okay, Suda, a lot of people ask me if I can ask you if there's a chance that they can see ever a new Killer is Dead or Killer 7 in the future. Is there any chance, or do you think that those stories are told and you would like to explore other IPs, characters and stories?
私の視聴者からも結構聞くんですけれど、キラー・イズ・デッドかキラー7の続編はいつか作ると思っていますか？またはその話がもう結末に、なってもう次のプロジェクトに移りたいと思っていますか？
キラー7に関して言うと、完全に結末を迎えてるんですけども、ただ可能性としてあるのであれば完全版というものが存在するかもしれません。ただそれは本当にカプコンさんが IP 持っているので、彼らがもし認めてくれるのであればそういう可能性もなくはないかもしれないです。
So for Killer 7, I mean, in my mind, that story has been told. That story is over. So I don't think we'd see a sequel. But if we did have something, it might be like a perfect version of the game that could come out. But of course, if we did something like that, Capcom has the IP, so it'd be a lot of discussions would be necessary.
So you're talking about something like a remaster or even a remake?
リメイクかリマスターっていう話ですか、パーフェクト版っていう。
シナリオを3分の1カットしたんですよね。ということは本当はあとは3分の2実はストーリーがあるんですよね。それを全部含めた形の完全版というものが、本当に可能性がもしあるのであればそういうものは存在しますね。
Sorry, by perfect version, I mean that in the final cut of the game, I wrote tons of stuff, but only maybe a third of what I wrote is in the final game.
Yeah.
So if I decided, ideally we could take those remaining 2/3 and include them in the final game for a perfect version, for like a complete story, if that makes sense.
So you still have all the scripts you wrote back then?
その台本まだ全部持ってます？
多分僕の PC に入ってると思う。もう捨ててなければ大丈夫だと思う。
I mean, I don't think I threw it away. It's probably in my PC.
Okay, that is cool. If that's not possible, that you can include them in a new version or something like that, you definitely have to release them via Twitter, Facebook or something like that, so everyone can enjoy them.
もしその完成版をなんかリリースできなかったら、Twitter とか Facebook でその台本をちょっとみんなと共有いただければすごい嬉しいんじゃないですか。
おお。Maybe ちょっと考えとくね。
I'll think about it. Yeah.
I see. Suda, what can we expect in the future from you? You have No More Heroes. You have the new wrestling game. Is there anything else you are working on right now besides of games? For maybe.
須田さんのこれからの作品についてなんですが、ノーマーヒーローズもあってレスリングゲームもあって、他の何か今企画していますか？もしかしたらゲーム以外のものでも。
いっぱい企画はしてるんですけども、やっぱりオリジナルのタイトル、新しいニュー IP をやっぱ作りたいですよね。次は。
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the thing I want to do next is, I have all sorts of different plans and ideas, but the next thing I want to work on is a new original IP.
Cool.
いや、ただやっぱり今まだノーマーヒーローズっていうのは3しかないんですよね。でロッキーはそのクリードまで合わせてロッキー5、6、7多分7か8ぐらいまでいってるんですよ。しかもファイナルファンタジーは今15か16ぐらいいってますよね。早く追いつかなきゃいけないから、ノーマーヒーローズもたくさん作らなきゃいけない。すごく忙しいです。
So for No More Heroes, I mean, of course, I want to make my original stuff, but I do also have this, idea that No More Heroes is only on 3, right? And Rocky, there's a lot more than 3. There's like 7 or 8 of them, and there's all the Creed movies as well. And then, Final Fantasy is on like 15 or 16 or something. So, I have a lot of catching up to do. I got to get No More Heroes up in the same zone.
早くファイナルファンタジーに追いつかないといけないんですよ。
I need to beat Final Fantasy, at least in numbering.
Suda, I wish you all the best for that. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to have you here. Wish you all the best and enjoy Gamescom and Germany here.
もう今日本当に聞いていただきありがとうございました。もうすごい楽しかったですよ。
こちらこそ Thank you so much.
I had a lot of fun too.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Vielen Dank an euch, dass ihr fleißig zugeschaut habt. Nicht nur bei euch zu Hause, sondern hier auch vor der Bühne. Hallo zusammen. Vielen Dank. Jetzt geht's erst einmal weiter mit Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Der gute Gregor hat da die lieben Entwickler und wird dann ein klein wenig mehr über das Spiel bzw. über die Expansion sprechen. Hier ist volles Haus, volles Programm. In diesem Sinne viel Spaß mit den nächsten Stunden hier auf der gamescom 2019.